The grand estate was quiet, kissed by the warmth of the early afternoon sun. Birds chirped over the sprawling gardens, and golden light filtered through the tall windows that lined the mansion's white walls. To the world outside, it was a picture of perfection, wealth, security, and elegance. But on this particular day, fate had woven a cruel twist inside those pristine halls. For in the very heart of the mansion, a scene unfolded that no amount of fortune or status could ever prevent. A child's cry for help and the desperate courage of someone who was never meant to be a hero. Before we dive deeper, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of courage when it matters most, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps spread more inspiring stories like this one. Amara Say had been working as a maid in the Veyron household for just over a year. She was young, quiet, and diligent, wearing her crisp blue uniform every morning with a discipline that spoke of hardship and humility. To her, the mansion was both a sanctuary and a daily reminder of everything she never had. While she dusted crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors, her mind often wandered back to the cramped one-room apartment she shared with her ailing grandmother in the city. Every paycheck she earned went straight to paying for medication, leaving her with little more than bus fare and enough for bread and tea. Still, Amara carried herself with dignity. She never asked for sympathy, only for work. On that day, she had been tidying the sitting room near the fireplace, her yellow gloves still damp from scrubbing, when she heard a muffled cry. At first, she thought it was her imagination. The mansion was large, and sounds often echoed strangely, but then she heard it again. A child's voice, urgent, strained, and desperate. Her heart raced. She dropped the rag in her hand and followed the sound, her footsteps quickening across the polished floor. What she saw when she turned the corner nearly froze her in place. Little Rowan, the 6-year-old son of billionaire Adrian Veyron, was being dragged by a masked man in black. The intruder had slipped into the mansion unnoticed, his movements precise, and his intent chillingly clear. The boy was struggling, kicking, and calling for help. But his small frame was no match for the man's strength. Amara's breath caught in her throat. She had no weapon, no training, nothing but instinct. Yet instinct can be louder than fear. Her eyes darted around the room and landed on the iron skillet that had been left from the morning breakfast. Without a second thought, she snatched it from the counter, her hands trembling, but her heart pounding with fire. As the masked man turned, she swung with all the force her body could muster. The skillet struck his shoulder, enough to throw him off balance. Rowan broke free and scrambled into Amara's arms, sobbing into her apron as she shielded him. The men lunged again, but Amara swung once more, this time catching him across the head. The impact sent him sprawling onto the carpet. She wasted no time, grabbing a thick rope from the drapes. She tied his wrists and ankles, her hands moving faster than she thought possible. By the time Adrian Veyron entered through the front door, briefcase in one hand and a teddy bear in the other, he was greeted not by the serenity of his home, but by a scene that left him speechless. His son clung to the maid, tears streaming down his face, while a masked kidnapper sat tied to a chair, groaning in defeat. Amara stood tall, her chest heaving, yellow gloves still gripping the skillet like a shield. Adrian's world tilted. The woman he barely noticed each day had just saved the life of his only child. The police were called and the intruder was taken away. Rowan would not leave Amara's side, clutching her hand as if it were the only anchor keeping him safe. For Adrian, gratitude surged alongside shock. He promised Amara reward, financial security, anything she wanted. Yet Amara only shook her head softly. "I did what anyone would have done," she said, her voice trembling. But deep inside, she knew not everyone would have. Not everyone would risk their life for a boy who wasn't theirs, especially when the world had given them so little. In the days that followed, Adrian couldn't stop replaying the scene in his mind. His admiration for Amara grew, but so did his curiosity. The kidnapping attempt had been too calculated, too precise. Someone knew when Rowan would be alone. Someone knew the security blind spots of the mansion. The intruder refused to reveal details, but fragments of information led investigators to believe this wasn't a random act. It was orchestrated, and the truth was about to tear Adrian's world apart. Weeks later, after tireless digging, the shocking revelation came to light. The order for Rowan's abduction had not come from an outsider, not from a stranger with malice. It had come from within Adrian's own family. His arranged brother, Lionel Veyron, had been drowning in debt after failed business ventures. Consumed by envy and desperation, he had arranged for his nephew to be taken, hoping to demand ransom that would pull him out of ruin. Adrian's heart shattered when he heard the confession. The betrayal ran deeper than money. It was blood against blood, kin against kin. As this truth settled over the mansion, Adrian found himself unable to stand. His wealth, his status, his carefully built empire, none of it had shielded him from the treachery of someone he once loved. And yet, in that darkest moment, he looked at Amara and realized the cruel irony of life. The one who had risked everything to protect Rowan was not family, not a partner in wealth, not a friend from high society. It was the maid he had barely spoken to, the woman who polished his floors in silence, the woman who the world overlooked. She had become more of family to him and his son than his own blood. For Amara, the revelation was bittersweet. She knew what betrayal felt like. Life had handed her plenty. But she also knew what loyalty meant, even when it cost you everything. In Adrian's broken eyes, she saw not just gratitude, but a man questioning everything he thought he knew about love, trust, and humanity. And in Rowan's small hands clutching hers, she felt the purest truth of all. Kindness needed no bloodline, no title, no wealth. It was a choice, and it was everything. Time passed and the Veyron household changed in ways no one could have predicted. Adrian offered Amara a position not just as staff but as part of their lives. He sent her grandmother the best medical care, ensured she never had to worry about rent or hunger again. He told her that while he could never erase the pain of her struggles, he could honor her courage with dignity and opportunity. For Rowan, Amara became a second mother, a guardian angel who would always remain etched in his memory as the woman who saved him when he needed it most. But for Adrian, the lesson was heavier. Wealth could build walls, but it could not shield the heart from betrayal. Status could buy loyalty, but it could never guarantee love. The truth that had shattered him also freed him. Freed him to see the worth in people, not by their station in life, but by the strength of their soul. And perhaps that is where this story leaves us. Not in the glimmer of chandeliers or the grandeur of estates, but in the quiet courage of a maid who proved that sometimes the greatest hero wears no crown, no title, no fortune, just a uniform, a pair of yellow gloves, and a heart brave enough to fight for someone else's child. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your engagement helps us keep bringing more stories of courage, sacrifice, and humanity to light. And before we end, we'd love to hear from you. Would you have done what Amara did if you were in her place? Comment below. We can't wait to read your thoughts. Because in the end, Stories like this remind us of something timeless. True wealth lies not in what we own, but in what we are willing to give when it matters most.